Guess who just texted me?
Who?
Cowboy. He was like, yo, we still doing lunch? I was like, actually, I scheduled a last minute podcast with Kirk, so.
What'd he say about that?
He's all right, let's do dinner.
He didn't even acknowledge it.
No. I'm like, yo.
Come on,
He said
Eddie.
You're getting balled up. You're getting balled up for not acknowledging him.
He has to come to the gym for that to happen.
You know, we didn't even start, but I'm going to put this part in there. Cowboy slacking.
You are now tuning in to the Relentless Project. Real people, real stories, real life.
You just got promoted to brown belt, right?
I did.
Congrats.
Thank you,
I
sir.
saw that.
Appreciate
I was typing
that.
the stuff up. I was like, oh, purple belt. And then I looked at the entry and I was like, oh, damn.
Little
He got
adjustment.
promoted.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank
on
you
your
very
brown
much.
belt.
Appreciate that.
Welcome to the Relentless Project. For those of you who don't know, this is Kirk representing the Academy, Pittsburgh. What's up?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
Of course. So where does your story start? I like to kind of give people a background of the guests coming in before we get into all the good stuff. Where'd you grow up? Where were you raised? What do you call home? I just did a gang sign.
You did
Like,
kind of. You
what
did a
was
little.
that?
You did a little
I wanted
thing
to
there. I don't
start-
know what that was.
Dude,
But,
past life creeping up, man.
well, where I came from, there are no gang signs. So I grew up in Bloomington, Indiana.
Hey, you
Small-
got farmer gangs over there.
Small town, southern Indiana, university town though. Indiana University is what Bloomington's known for. So
Not IUP. The actual.
no,
Indiana.
people say when I wear Indiana stuff or say IU around here, they're like, oh, IUP, and I'm like, no, the real one, the one in Indiana,
the father's school or mother's
exactly.
school.
And I don't know how that works. I don't know how you have a IUP. I don't know how you have a university in California that's not there.
California University. What is it? California University of Pennsylvania.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's like they like their style, so they bring like a satellite campus. Because at Penn State, they have a lot of like satellite campuses, but it's within.
Yeah, Indiana has the same thing. They have IU Fort Wayne and IUSB, South Bend, all those. But then you have IUP, which is pretty strange. But anyway, I like to correct people when they talk about that. So IU Bloomington is the mothership, if you will. So that's where I grew up.
IUB.
Yeah, IUB, that's right. Born and raised, Bloomington, Indiana. Spent 18-ish years.
Ish, there you go.
18-ish
That's a
years
good
there.
name.
So I went to, obviously, elementary, high school, Bloomington, and then went to Indiana University, Bloomington. Actually stayed at home, lived with my parents for 4 years. Probably the first responsible decision I ever made in my life was to go, yeah, you know what? My mom said, I've probably got enough money to pay for your room and board, or I can pay for your tuition, but probably not your room and board, right? So either you stay at home and your school's going to be paid for in 4 years, or you're probably going to have to take out some loans to get through the whole thing. And I was like, I don't have it so bad. I can ride a bike to campus and be there in 5 minutes. So
If I could
let me
do it
just do
over
that.
again, that's what I would do. I would stay
Now,
home.
the funny thing is we tell, like my daughter's looking at schools now. She's actually looking kind of local here. She wants to stay around pretty close to us. But we tell her the opposite because I never stayed in a dorm and lived that life. And I think that's part of the college experience. And
I would agree.
my wife did. So I was like, no, you need to, at least for the beginning, you need to go experience it, be on your own, have that, establish those friendships, do that stuff. Because that was something that I felt like I definitely missed. I knew my way around, knew enough people that I could kind of get into the parties and do all the same stuff. But it was different staying at home.
I think, financially, I would have stayed at home. My mom is old school Puerto Rican woman. She would cook for me, clean for me if I let her, wash my drawers. Like that's the type of. If I go over there, she'll still be like, "Hey, let me do your laundry." I'm like, "I'm a grown ass man, Mom. You ain't gonna be looking at my underwears anymore." But I think it's very important to kind of submerge yourself in that community, in that environment, because one of the things that I think broke me out of my past and that environment I was in was staying on campus, being around kids from different cultures and different walks of life and different states. And one of my closest friends actually sponsors the podcast, Carbo Jewelers. Make sure you go check him out. But I met him in college, and we've maintained, that's a relationship that I've maintained throughout this entire time, because we were actually neighbors. And it's funny how our relationship started. We were about to fight. Drama. Some chick came on saying that her boyfriend was this, and that he was going to beat me up. And then she was telling him the same thing. I'm like, I don't know this dude. I don't know you. Like, whatever, we can get it. And we'd pass by each other and kind of give each other the look. And then later we realized this chick was just causing drama. And we're like, shit, you're actually cool. Now we're boys. So not to out that, but it's very important. I think those relationships you form in college, and you're there, like, it's cool to like wake up, walk to class, go to the cafeteria, do your homework there, which you still have that if you live off campus, but you always have to go home after that.
A little different. Now it did change. Like I will say, my mom was always very strict with me growing up, and very similar to you. Like I had it really good. Like in college, I had this. She cooked, she cleaned. 3 meals a day. My friends used to love to come to my house because my mom cooked so much. She was from the South, and grew up cooking and cooked for all of her siblings. She was the oldest of 9, so she dropped out of school early to take care of her siblings, and they didn't have anything.
Same story with my mom.
So she was just used to taking care of folks, including my dad. Some of my friends used to laugh at me because I lived in the basement of my house. I moved into the basement when I was like in high school or something. And there were 2 doors. One went to my bathroom and the other was a laundry room. And it was like magic because my bathroom also had like a little closet. It was used to be a shower, never used. So I used it as my closet. So I'd take clothes, throw them in the one door, balled up, dirty. The next day they'd come beautifully cleaned and pressed in my closet the next day. People were like, this is just unbelievable. This is how you have it. That's how I lived. So it was kind of weird, getting out and after college, all of a sudden I had to realize that like clothes don't do themselves, and someone has to shop for these groceries and they cost money, and all that stuff was pretty rude awakening for me.
It's a double-edged sword, because when you have that's like the ideal family life, you have someone taking care of you. You're like, man, this is great. All I have to focus on is my studies.
Yep.
But then you don't get that real world experience coming out of that house. Like once you're graduated and now you have to learn to be self-sufficient.
Yep.
But unfortunately, I had to do that by like the age of 8 because I had to clean my own toilet. My mom would be like, hey, all the kids were watching cartoons on Saturday, and I had to like deep clean the bathrooms and all this. And I'm like, and then the older I got, the more I got taken care of. And I'm like, well, why was I washing toilets at the age of 8? And now you don't let me do anything. I can't be in the kitchen when you're cooking. I can't do anything. And even I'm 31, turning 32. I'll go over there and I'm like, I'm about to go out with my boys. And she'd be like, all right, well, I'll wait up for you. I'm like, no. I'm a grown man. She's like, well, let me know when you get to where you're at. I'm a grown man.
Right.
I'm a grown man. And I'll tell her, I'll go get a hotel. I don't have to stay here. She's like, go get a hotel. Go get a hotel. I'm like, nah, I ain't getting a hotel.
Right. She'll challenge you.
Yeah, she'll
call you
challenge
bluff.
me. So how was that family life growing up? Like how much does that impact the man you've become today, having that close-knit family? Because it seems like it was like a very close-knit family.
So a few interesting dynamics in my family. So yeah, my mom did everything for us, provided, cook, like I said, cook, clean, took care of everything. It was very kind of, like I said, pretty strict. My father, and I tell people now that if my father was born a generation or 2 later, I'm sure he would have been diagnosed like on the autism spectrum, probably Asperger's, something like that. He just didn't have a like social personality. He was very, very quiet, super intelligent. He was an electrical engineer. He would get up in front of, like at church, he would get up in front of people and do like all these like eloquent prayers and teach like Bible classes and do all this stuff. But my friends all thought he hated them. And every girlfriend that I ever had was like, why does your dad hate me so much? I was like, my dad doesn't hate you. Well, he's never talked to me. Yeah. He doesn't talk to me either. And he would just be like, he would freak me out because it'd be late at night and I'd go to the kitchen and get something to eat or something and flip on the light. He'd be like sitting in the corner. I'm like, oh, what are you doing, man? He's like, I'm just thinking. All right, well.
What you think?
Should I turn the light back off, or you good? So anyway, so it was mostly my mom. And then I'm the youngest by far of 4 siblings. So just for perspective, my oldest sister, my mom missed her high school graduation because she was in labor with me. So oldest sister about 18 years older, brother 17, sister 13-ish. I'm going to mess that up, and I'm sure my youngest sibling will correct me on that later. But so by the time I was old enough to remember, they were pretty much all out of the house, right? So I was pretty much an only child, even though I have 3 siblings, and raised kind of like a single parent, even though I had my father in the house, right? So a little different, but very, very religious. So which we could probably spend the whole however much time you got in your memory there talking just about like my views on religion, because I've been pretty I'll say jaded from my youth. I probably have as much Bible knowledge as anybody, and I got it all crammed into me in about 17 years because we went to church. It was like born again Christian Church of Christ. Went to church Sunday, twice on Sunday, and then on Wednesday night, and then like summer vacation Bible school and church camp and all these other things. So it kind of, all my relationships, everything kind of shaped me there. Now that when it came to like me kind of thinking for myself and realizing, you know what, this is not really mine, it's yours. And I don't think I'm like going to be doing this anymore. That created quite a division between me and the rest of my family. So like I said, it shapes up a great, just going back to your question, it shapes me a great deal. I think that it provided a huge benefit for me in terms of just morality and understanding, like kind of the most important thing in life is to be a good person and to be charitable and to help other people. And I think that's something that is one of the things that I believe in more than anything else. And the thing that gives me kind of pleasure is helping somebody else even now.
I'd be interested in kind of talking about that a little bit, because I think a lot of people share that same thing, you know. And when, you know, I'm a God-fearing man, but I grew up like being anti-religious, if you will. You know, we grew up Pentecostal, which they call themselves like the soldiers of God. Because I remember being in church, and I'm not exaggerating, people doing backflips in the aisle and kicking doors open and I remember thinking like, what is going on? Like, I don't want anything, but I had to go to church, right? Because my mom would make sure I went to church.
Yep.
And when I was old enough to think for myself, I was like, this is dumb. This is dumb. And I didn't go to church anymore. And I just kind of did my own thing. But we were introduced to the Bible and the Word. So like, I knew the teachings and I understood what was going on, but the church stuff, I'm like, that's weird. Like that's religious, culty.
Yeah. It's so selective too.
Yeah.
What people choose to believe about that book, right? There are certain things that don't apply and certain things that do apply. And, you know, you can pick and choose whatever you want, right? And I don't call myself a religious person, but I'm not anti-religion either. I think I'm more anti-organized religion.
So that's what I tell people when people are like, are you religious? I'm not religious. I go to church.
Yeah.
I read my Bible. I believe in the teachings in Jesus Christ. But like religion, it becomes a weird thing because people start to use religion to kind of put themselves on a pedestal and be like, oh, you're not here. And I think that's the problem with religion today. It's if you look at what the teachings are, it's love your neighbor as I loved you.
Yep.
Right? Like when you think of it like that, it's simple. Now there's a lot of complexities that go into it because the Bible has a lot of stories that Jesus told for us to understand his relationship with us. It has his story. It has a bunch of stuff that accounts in history and stuff that's happened. But like, we can use that, like you said, you can pick one verse and be like, oh, look, boom, and use that verse to like attack someone, completely disregarding the context, what it was, its intention. It's like we start to weaponize this book to give ourselves, like, either to make ourselves feel better. Oh, I'm more Christian than you. He loves me more. Like it becomes weird, man. And like, but if you just take it for what it is, and it's like, you know, Jesus died, rose again, and loves us. You should love everyone else as he loves us.
Sure.
Which is impossible because we're human.
Yeah.
But it's just morality, you know. Like I always give people the benefit of the doubt. I like to, you know, I've been fucked over more times than I can count, but at the end of the day, it's not about people's reaction to me. It's how I approach people. So I'm going to continue to approach people with the best of intention. That's all I can do.
Yep.
So it's interesting how religion comes to play in people. And like when you're talking to people and they're like, oh, I'm not religious. And it's like they grew up in church.
Yeah.
And they have that church hurt is what it's called. Church hurt.
I don't have the audacity to believe that I've got it all figured out. And people who say, absolutely, this is what happens after you die. This is what happened before I was born and before the universe. And here's exactly the rules that you need to follow in order to get wherever. Like, nobody knows that stuff.
Nobody.
We don't. We have to do our best, right? We have to do our best. And the things that, so I'll say about the church specifically, when I grew up, the two things that drove me out. One were the absolute, this is how it is, our way is the way. And literally I had conversations with people in church, like the preacher, our minister, my parents, people asking questions about like, well, what about the Buddhists? What about the Muslims who believe with all their heart that what they believe is it? And they're living their lives as great people, and they're charitable, and they do unto others, right? All these things that we hold dear. What about them? Like, well, it's our job to tell them the truth. Like, that's why we have ministry, and that's why we have people that go all over the world to tell them what's the real truth. I was like, well, how do you know maybe yours isn't real? So that was the number one thing, and then the other one was the pressure. Like, so our church was, you get baptized or converted, become a Christian around adolescence, right? So it's a decision that you make, and they do this invitation song at the end of every church, at the end of every service, right? Yeah. So that they have the lesson or the sermon, and then they make this invitation, and then they play this song. And one by one, over the maybe about 2 years, right? A span of about 2 years, one by one, all of my friends, one by one, walk up, and we all sat together up in the corner, right? They would walk up, or maybe two of them would walk up, and it'd be this big thing, and they're crying, and they go up, and then there's this big, the baptismal over above everybody, and they come out in these white outfits, and they do their thing, and they get baptized, and like everybody's happy, and they're hugging them, right? And that happened one by one until I was like the last one, or the only one who hasn't done it. And literally every time that song sang, I felt that whole place, like eyeballs looking at me. It got to the point where I would sneak out of church early before they did the invitation song and go out the basement. And when I could finally drive a car, I would take my car to church so I could escape early. The minister would wait for me at different doors and try to have a conversation. Hey, I want to have a conversation with you. I'm good. Like, go the other way, right? So it was a big source of stress for me for several years of my life. And like I said, once I finally made the decision to look, I'm not going to go here anymore, it caused a lot of commotion in my family. And so it's one of those things that, like I said, we could talk about the whole
we really could
2 hours.
Yeah, man, religion, it's a funny thing, and I don't try to shy away from any conversation here, because I think whether you believe, whether you don't believe, whether you're anti or for, like, I think you can, if you have the best of intention and you're listening to people's stories, I think you can pull from any conversation we have on here, which is why I try not to shy away from any of that. And I think the problem lies is with people in the extreme on both ends, right? Like,
yep.
People who will come in here, like I had
politics,
had someone,
right?
Yeah, like believe what you want to believe. Like, who am I to tell you what to believe? I'll entertain any conversation, because I'm going to try to learn from it.
Yep.
I had someone listening to my podcast who claimed to be a friend. I like to think we're friends, but he's like, man, I would listen to your podcast, but you don't have anything about God on it. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Wow.
All right, so you don't listen to my podcast. Cool, good friend. Which, whatever, you don't have to listen to it. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. But you slid into my DM, so now we're going to talk about it. I said, if you've listened to my podcast, God comes up often. People in different walks of life, whether they believe, don't believe, they don't know, they're not sure. And I have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And I believe it's my job as a Christian to spread the word, but it's not my job to shove it down people's throats, right? Like, I form an invite. That's all we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Call an invite. The rest is up to that person and God's work in his life. I'm not going to sit here and make this a God podcast where I ambush someone and now they're like, they don't even want to talk, or now the whole premise of the Relentless Project in the sense of like people's stories and their journey and where they're at and where they're going. Like that takes away from all of that conversation because I wanted to be selfish and high and mighty and shove it down. He's like, well, as a Christian, you're supposed to, everything you do, put your socks on, it's with God first. And then I'm like, okay. So like, I can't say too much because I don't want to put these people on blast, but I hit them with something like, oh, okay. In your line of work, which is not Christian, I said, do you talk to your customers about God? Because you would lose a lot of customers if they come to order something and you're like, hey, before you take this, let me tell you about our Lord and Savior. Do you do that? Because you have to keep that energy. If you're going to come at me about it, you should be doing that.
Yep.
Well, I see you were offended. I'm like, no, I'm not offended. You've opened the conversation. I want to have it now. You know, so like there's a saying, you know, before you talk about the splinter in your brother's eye, pull out the plank in yours.
In your own, yeah.
And it's like that like we walk around high and mighty, and then when we look in the mirror, we're like, oh wait, well, hold on, never mind. It's like keep that same energy. So religion is interesting.
And I'll say that, and like kind of doesn't need to be the last, but the last thing I'll say on that right now is, again, those were the two things that I told you about that kind of drove me out. What I feel like I've gained from that and what I've taken from my entire life is my mother was a saint. I believe she was sent from heaven, right? Because she spent her entire life dedicated to service of others. She was her kind of vocation was a seamstress. Like I said, she used to cook. She used to cook for other people that didn't have food. She used to do Meals on Wheels, and then she would make her own food and deliver it to people. She was constantly going to see people that were in like convalescent centers and nursing homes and visiting them. I don't know how many times I remember people coming to our house. She used to do sewing jobs for people. She would sew clothes and make dresses and different stuff and alterations. And people would come and they would try to pay her, and she would be like, no, I don't need money. And we didn't have a lot of money. We weren't poor, but we didn't have a ton of money. She could have used the money for sure. And so many times these people, and I knew some of these people that she was working for had way more money than us. And she was like not trying to take their money. And I was like, what are you doing? She was just like, I do it to help them. Like I do it because it's something that I can do and it's my gift. And, you know, so sometimes she would take money, sometimes she wouldn't, but she just constantly spent her entire life to the point where my mom passed of cancer several years ago. And she never went to the doctor. She was a stubborn Southern woman who never got exams and didn't probably where I got some of that from. But the only way they basically found out was she had been at a nursing home visiting someone else and she passed out and the nurses couldn't revive her. So they took her to the hospital and then they find out she has this heart problem and then they start doing more tests and then they're in the process of like getting all these tests done, then they find out she has cancer. And by the time they found out, it was basically everywhere. So it was like not many months from the time they found out till it like turned her into basically nothing. And my siblings and myself, everybody said she was going to outlive all of us. Didn't matter how old she was going to outlive all of us and all of our kids because she was the strongest person we ever knew in our lives. And she went from that to just an absolute like shadow, like almost nothing in a very few amount of months. But like I said, I always have taken kind of her spirit of hospitality and service to others, and like that's what religion's about to me.
Yeah, she is outliving.
That's what religion's about. It's about doing your best to be that. And anyway.
I feel in a way she is outliving because if you look at when I ask people, especially like fighters post fight, like when the lights are off and the fans are gone, like what do you want to be remembered by? What do you want to leave behind? And I use that to kind of gauge a conversation and gauge a person, right? Because there's nothing wrong with the latter, but some people, I want to be known as the best fighter in the world, or having this title, or which is all good. That's great, right? Like that's what you're fighting for. And then you'll have people who will be like, I want to be known for spreading good and impacting people, and that makes you that gets you thinking, right? And it's like, what do I want to be remembered by, right?
Yeah.
Like when I'm in my bed ready to kick the can and go, like I want to be remembered as someone who gave to others and sacrificed for others. That's what I'm gonna be remembered by.
Yep.
Because that's what I live by. I try to live by that a lot. And there could have been many opportunities where I could have been self-fulfilling and made a lot of money and not be here right now. But like, that's not where I find joy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when you start to think like, man, like you're still talking about your mother and everything she's done. And, you know, she's living through you now, and you're pushing her memory forward by being selfless and doing the same things that she would do for anyone.
Yep.
So I think that's very cool and very interesting. And, you know, I love my mother. She's still with me, thankfully. But she's the same way, you know, and we like to think like, man, like when that day comes, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But you start to think about all the things she's done, and you're like, man, like there's no money. There's no money in the world that can replace that.
Yep. You know, the biggest thing when you lose, it sounds like they're very similar. That figure, my mom, when I lost my dad several years after that, not nearly as impactful to me, just because of what the relationship was between my mom and myself, and all the things she did for others. But there are moments in your life when you just need to call your mom, whether it's good, bad, whatever, something horrible happens to you, you need somebody to talk to bring you up and tell you everything's going to be all right. Or you're really proud of something, right? You don't want to just go boast to somebody about something you did. You got promoted at work, or you got a brown belt, right? That wouldn't mean anything to my mom. She wouldn't know what that meant. But when that happened, the first reaction to me was, man, I wish I could call my mom and tell her. Like, because by this time she would know how much that meant to me. Back then, I didn't even know what jiu-jitsu was, right, when she was alive. But those are the moments that you miss, right? So when you hear people say, you know, hey, call your mom, right, and appreciate her when she's around, like, I think that's what it's about, right? Because there's nobody can take that
So
place.
I just got goosebumps. My mom called me right before we clicked record on everything, and I love my mom, but when we're on the phone, we're talking.
Yeah.
You know? But that's so true, because my mom came from nothing, and she'll watch my podcast. She watches it religiously. Doesn't understand a single word. She speaks Spanish. I'm sure she can pick up some word, but like, she watches it because she knows what it means to me. You know, and I always, like, if I missed a call, I texted her. I was like, hey, I'll call you after this interview. I'm on the podcast. Oh, you know, good luck. Da, da, da. Like, I'm just like, when you say stuff like that, I'm like, wow, like, it just means more to me. Like, my mom still calls me. If I go 2 days, she's like, well, you forget you have a mom? And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, but it makes you really appreciate those moments. And like, you know what? Like, not even your mom, your brother, your father, a good friend, like, appreciate what's surrounding you right now, because none of it is guaranteed.
Yeah.
And everything can change in the blink of an eye. So I think that's deep, man. Really appreciate those relationships you form.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, you know, they're impactful. You know, if you're having issues with your dad or mom, like, try to talk to them. I have friends like that. Like, man, my damn mom. And I'm just like, you got to understand where they're at. Try to approach them. All you can do is be there for them. If they don't want it, don't force it. But be there.
For sure.
Because hopefully one day, when they want to be there, you're already there and you're ready. That's crazy. You played sports growing up? Not to segue drastically, but
no, it's all right.
So like, you have you have this tight knit family. You were talking about balling, man. I didn't peg you as a baller.
No,
you know what I mean.
No, I'm sure you didn't. But yeah, so growing up in Bloomington, Indiana, basketball is life, right? Like
big ball area.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of where basketball is king. So
careful, there's some NCAA people here who might.
Whatever.
He's like, I stand on business.
Even I tell people all the time, even the non-ballers in Indiana will ball circles around anybody from Pennsylvania or anywhere else. So
I like to think I play basketball. But I just take it in. That's all I can do as a big boy.
Yeah, but so I actually, like, basketball was always my favorite sport, but it's funny because in addition to kind of being very religious and kind of strict and different things like that, and the fact that my father was a bit absent, even though he was there, I didn't have any of the, you hear a lot of the typical stories of, parents trying to live vicariously through their kids and push them super hard and have them do things. I had none of that. Literally the opposite. Like, oh, you want to play football or okay. Like, Actually, football was like, why would you want to do that? You can get hurt. Like, don't do that. Here, do something else. Take piano lessons. How about gymnastics? Gymnastics sounds good. Like, there's some things that my mom. I wish I would have
taken gymnastics. Man.
Those are two things that my mom used to always say to me that I should do, and I never did, and I always regret it. Like gymnastics, because you'd be the strongest person ever, and piano, because I love music, and I actually used to sing a while back, but I never played.
Singing
I wish
and
I did.
Basketball.
Yeah,
blow my mind.
yeah, I did a little bit of jazz standards back in the day. So after Indiana, I moved to, I lived in Gary, Indiana for like a year, which I can tell you about that. Interesting. But Chicago is where I spent the last almost 20 years before coming to Pittsburgh.
Chirac.
And at one point took a vocal course, did a like 3-song set with a quartet behind me at a Andy's Jazz Club downtown Chicago, and sang at my own wedding to my wife when she danced with her dad.
That's awesome.
And then sang at one of my best friend's weddings in Vegas once, when in the middle of the ceremony, a cappella in a chapel in Vegas somewhere.
Dude, one thing that's awesome is like music. I love musicians. Like even when I'll go to church and I'll see the worship band on, you see the person singing and you know they have in-ears and they're listening to what's going on, or the person playing guitar and singing, like at concerts and shows. I'm like, how?
It's crazy, but you know it's funny that, like, I don't consider myself a musician. Like, I can sing, I can carry. I was blessed with being able to carry a tune, and I can hear it, right? I can hear pitch and things like that. But I can't. You show me music, I can't read a lick of sheet music. I have a really good friend of mine who was actually in my wedding, who I met in college, who has a photographic memory and has had like 20 different professions. He's probably got a new one now. I need to call him and find out what he's doing now. But he taught himself to play piano while we were in college, and just like figured it out, read music, do the whole thing. And like, he can play. Like, we would go to the music school and he would play a whole song and I could sing with him and like whatever. I could never do that because I never took the time to learn how to like read the music and things like that. But I always loved to sing. So.
I know musicians who can play the piano, guitar,
yeah,
and they can't read music.
It's crazy.
They just they go by sound.
Yeah,
it's just like I want to live for an hour in like one of their brains. Mm-hmm. It's like how, or even someone who reads music. I took chorus in school, middle school,
yep.
At high school, kind of beginning of high school. I was in chorus. They were trying to teach us that. I couldn't tell you what a half note looks like or any of that. And you see people that are like, "Oh, what are we playing? I've never played this. Let me see." Okay, and they just go off.
It's crazy.
And you're like, "Okay, that makes sense." Not or drummers. Like yeah. They're not reading. I don't know if you can read, like if you read music with drumming, but like they'll just sit there and they'll go.
Hold the beat.
Dude, I work with a guy I actually had the lead singer of his band on here, David Kelly, but he drums and I hear him, I'm like, dude, that is sick. Like, how do you're doing like 50 things at once. You have the double kick here, the hi-hat. I'm just like, musicians blow my mind.
You know what's cool? Little known fact about Worthy, played the bongo drums. How about that?
What doesn't he do? I mean, like we can have an entire set. This is when you guys relaunch your podcast. Yep. We're going to tie it to the Relentless Project, and it's just going to be a complete different segment because to have one episode doesn't even make sense. It's
beautiful.
It's a disservice.
Fight Worthy podcast sponsored by the Relentless Project.
Dude, I could do it here.
There you go.
Hey,
it's pretty nice.
We're going to talk about that. Dude, that'd be sweet.
Yeah, so I did realize you asked me about sports, and I talked about music. So I did play some sports, but I didn't have any kind of influence from my parents. So it was all
what got
basically,
you into, like, you just were interested in basketball?
Yeah, I mean, basketball was life. Like I said, everybody played ball, and I always played around the neighborhood and pickup games, things like that. That was the only sport I ever tried out for and didn't make the team, and it like ruined me. So I went out freshman year basketball. I was like, oh, I can play. We can play. I play with everybody, whatever. I play with the guys on the team. We can do it. I didn't make the team, and it wasn't the triumphant Michael Jordan story of I'm going to come back harder and stronger. I was like, yeah, never doing that again. That sucked. like the rejection. I was like, nope, never doing that. So I had friends later that were like, hey, man, why don't you go out for the team again when I was in high school and stuff? You should play because I always played with them and stuff. I was like, nah, I'm good.
But they didn't want me.
I'm good.
Nope.
Yeah.
They didn't want me.
No, I'm good. I'm going to focus on other things. So I ended up going out for football, which I fell in love with. Absolutely fell in love with. I was the smallest kid, not very athletic. It's funny, my favorite player was Deion Sanders. So I played defensive back, and I wore number 21 for prime time, even though I have not a bit of his athletic ability or personality or anything like that. But I love that dude. So I was like 21. I'm a cornerback. I'm a strong safety, whatever. I was like 145 pounds strong safety in a big school, and spent more time in the training room than I probably did on the field. But absolutely loved it. It taught me a lot about kind of being a teammate, and kind of my first taste of kind of adversity and doing something hard and finding the result out of that and getting joy from something that's really difficult. So did that, and then ran track I think just my senior year, because my best friend at the time, he was running, and he said the coach asked about me, and it was the first time I ever thought, like, oh, somebody like wants me for something. That's kind of cool. So I actually went out and ran the relay with him, and so that was cool. So really, football and track was it. Other than just some like youth sports and things like that. And then, like I said, went to IU for college, and probably spent more time in what's called the Hyper building. Anybody that knows IU knows the old Hyper. And that was where there's basketball courts as far as you can see. And if you can run, you play on the first court. And then it kind of goes down from there.
If you're the last court, you're with me.
So I did play on the first court a lot. Played with a lot of players at the school and other schools, things like that. But all like intramural and just mostly pickup games, things like that. But I played basketball until again moved to Chicago after graduation. Played on a lot of pickup courts on the south side of Chicago, and so
that's where the real ballers are.
Yeah, and that's where I learned the difference between organized like pick and roll, backdoor screens, screen the screener, right? And then you get there, and it's like, why does nobody want to use this screen? It's a perfectly good screen. Well, it's because I want to cross somebody over and make them fall down. And
there's a lot of talent that comes from the street. Like,
yeah, for sure.
You see, what was it, AN1?
AN1 mixtape.
Yeah, like you see a lot of those guys, like they're fucking phenomenal. It makes you wonder, like, why aren't you doing it professionally?
Yeah.
Like, cause they don't want. This is what they want to do, and it blows my mind the talent that is out there. And that's why I love this podcast, right? Because like, you didn't play professional sports, did you? Nah. But you're locally, and we'll get into it. You're seen as like, people know you, and especially in the martial arts world and jiu-jitsu. Like, you weren't a professional athlete. You weren't, but you have a story. Yeah. Everyone has a story. And like, if I could walk down the street, I don't want to be that guy with a mic in the street. But like, I do sometimes, because I'm like, dude, every time I'm walking down, I'm like, I'd love to pick this dude's brain. Just like, or you see the musicians. I was in Vegas for CJI. Dude, there's this saxophone's my favorite player. There's this dude playing the saxophone. And I'm going down the escalator outside, and I just hear this like phenomenal music. I'm like, dude, Kenny G on the street right now? Like, what's going on? Some dude.
Yeah.
Some dude with a saxophone connected to a little PA speaker with a hat. I'm the type of, I would love to sit down with a dude, then I'd be taking from his money, so I can't do that. But, dude, like, what led you here? Why are you doing this? Like, what's your story? He's out, he's dressed up nicely, like, he's playing in the street in Vegas. Like, it blows my mind. I'm like, dude, you should like be in a concert venue.
Yeah.
I would pay to come see. It's just phenomenal. Just playing in the street. Like, I'd love to pick people's brains like that.
Yeah.
So what got you? We're gonna skip a few decades.
All right. Hey, let's do it.
So you were playing sports recreationally. How do you just jump into jiu-jitsu, and how was it jumping in at the age of 40? Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to say later on in life,
later in life,
because I started when I'm 31 about 4 years ago. And I'm like, man, I had a late start. You see these kids coming in, and they're just savages. But you're successful in jiu-jitsu, and you started at 40. Like, how was that for you? What segued you into jiu-jitsu at the age of 40?
So I'll say I've never been somebody to do something halfway. Really, I'm a bit obsessive compulsive when it comes to a lot of things. And once I get started in something, I want to finish it, right? And to me, kind of like jiu-jitsu means black belt, right? That's how you finish that thing, right? So I think it was like inevitable. Once I got in, eventually if I'm gonna be walking, I'm probably gonna finish that thing, right? And I know black belt's just the beginning and all that, but
Yeah, all those jiu-jitsu people, whatever.
right. But anyway, so after Indiana, lived in, like I said, Gary for a year, Chicago for a long time. But right before I moved to Pittsburgh, I was working out with a group of guys. Shout out Joel Nuestro at Export Fitness on State Street in Chicago in the South Loop. And we used to meet there like 6 days a week, and I was lifting heavy. That's like the only time in my life I really was like kind of getting after it, right, with like heavy
Vertically
work.
challenged, horizontally
There
gifted.
you
That's
go.
what I
There you
tell
go. Now
myself.
I never got to like look like you did, but that was kind of my
I
goal.
can't
I
grow,
wanted to be
so
I
I was
wanted to
like-
be giant. But we were lifting heavy a lot, and every day, and actually before I even started working out with him, I would see him in the gym, and he was this like short, not that stocky Filipino dude. He was like, I want to say 5'6", but
So average.
But yeah, right, average. But the strongest dude I'd ever seen in my life, like lifting crazy weights. And every day after he would work out, he would go, and there were like 2 heavy bags in the back of the gym. This was like a 3-story gym in Chicago, big old gym. And he would hit and kick this heavy bag. And when he would kick that bag, you could hear it everywhere in the gym. I would hear this thunk, like the walls are shaking. I'm like, what is going on? And I would go over there, and I was like, that dude is kicking the shit out of that bag. Like, oh my God, I would hate to be that bag right now, right? If he did that to a
was like a
person, he'd
sandbag.
kill him, right? Yeah, it was like a heavy bag, right? It was like a swinging
Kicking
heavy
those.
bag. He was just kicking,
Okay.
right? So anyway, one day he was in the gym, and I had seen this guy all the time. We always had kind of the same schedule, but didn't know him. And he was doing push-ups on a little medicine ball, like a 5-pound medicine ball, where you switch hands, do them explosive push-ups, jump and catch, and jump and catch. And at one point, I just walked over to him. I was like, "Man, you gotta chill out a little bit." He was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "You're making me feel bad over here. Like, all of us can't do what you do. All right, so can you just like calm down just a little bit with the crazy
come in after
workouts?"
hours.
And he was like, "No, you could do this." And I was like, "No, I really couldn't." He was like, "Come on, try it. I'm gonna show you." So anyway, from that day, he started showing me some stuff, and then I was like, "Tell me what you do on this bag." And he was like, I guess he was I don't know, it was Taekwondo or Muay Thai. I don't remember what it was. He was a black belt in something from years back, and he used to compete and do things like that. And he actually knew a little jiu-jitsu, and he was into MMA. And so that was like my first introduction to somebody who actually kind of did that, kind of understood that world. And he started showing me the basics of like how to throw punches and kicks and things like that. And I thought it was really cool. And I started taking like private lessons with a boxing trainer that worked at that gym, learning little like cool combinations. And all it was is like, you learn the combination, you duck, it's just pad work. It's like choreography, right? It's like choreographed
but
pad
you're
work,
like,
and you
trained fighter.
and you think you're a badass, right? I could take anybody on the street down because I can do this pad work. But anyway, at the same time, so I started watching the UFC, and first UFC fight I ever saw was I was actually went out with some guys to a bar, and I used to watch. You remember HD Net? Like the first, I don't know if that's before your time. The first, like when HD TV first became a thing, they had specific channels. It's like 4K now, like specific channels that were HD. And Mark Cuban, Hoosier, by the way, shout out. Mark Cuban owned this network called HD Net, and they used to have fights. I don't remember what league it was, but it was like the old school, like before the UFC. And there was a dude, James Irwin. James Irwin was like the light heavyweight or middle. He's like the middleweight champ, and he was like looked like a calendar model, and he was just like knocking fools out. I thought he was like the toughest dude in the entire world, right? So I used to watch him on these late night HD Net fights. I was like, this guy's the best. Anyway, I went out to this bar with some guys to watch the UFC. It was the first time I ever saw a pay-per-view, and James Irwin was fighting this guy named Anderson Silva, right?
Heard of that guy.
And I was like, and they showed this dude, Anderson Silva, he's this champ, this Brazilian, skinny guy, right? I'm like, this guy's going to get wrecked. Watch this dude coming out. He's crazy. Well, of course, Anderson Silva just wiped the floor with him in a round, like just knocked him out and whatever. And I was hooked at that point. I was like, that guy's my favorite fighter ever. I was like, I'm watching every fight that guy ever has. And so like, that was like my introduction to the combat sports world. And I just became obsessed with watching it. I just thought these were the most fascinating humans on the planet. Like they were just in such good shape, and to be able to like overcome other individuals like that, just to be able to do anything, right? And that guy was like this skinny dude that you couldn't pick out of a lineup, and he knocked this guy that looked like a superhero out, right? So I was like, yeah, this is it. So fast forward, moved to Pittsburgh, and I was still really into the UFC, and I was looking up like gyms because I kind of like wanted to see it up close, to see what these guys do, because I had so much respect. I just wanted to learn the workouts, right? I just want to get in that kind of shape, right? So found Fight Club Pittsburgh, which happened to be close to my house. Went over, and at the time I was playing basketball like a couple days a week. I'd go over to the whatever the big fitness center is here. I can't even remember the name of it. But I would go over and play ball with these guys on in the middle of the day, because I worked nights at the time. And so I went over and checked this gym out, and I remember walking in the middle of the day. There's really nobody there. Adam Milstead was at the front desk. He actually made the UFC. He was a UFC heavyweight for a while. This was before that. And asked him just to run me through a class. So I went through like an MMA class. They did a lot of grappling. They did like they were doing arm bars, triangles, stuff, and it was cool, but I couldn't really participate all that much because I just didn't have a frame of reference. I was like, I don't know what is going on right now and what you're doing. It's cool. I like it. I think it's very interesting, but I didn't get a workout, right? And I really like to work out a lot. So when the class was over, I was like, hey, any way you could like run me through like an actual workout, like show me what you guys do? And he was like, yeah, sure. And he spent the next like 45 minutes basically giving me a boot camp of like carry this heavy bag back and forth and slam it and then punches and do all this stuff back and forth, burpees. It was miserable, but I loved it. I was like, at the end of that hour, I was like, man, I'm in. What do I need to do? Where do I sign up, right? So came back a little while later. Kama was there, and that's actually who I signed up with. And it's crazy because when you don't have a combat sports background and you don't have any martial arts, I don't box, I didn't wrestle, none of that stuff. A place like that is super intimidating.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
Walking in and there's like skulls on the wall and there's cages and people are literally punching each other in the face and there's music playing. I'm just like, what is going on? And kind of, that was like the first time after like high school football back in the day, this was the first time that I actually kind of made a decision to do something that I knew was really, really hard. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm terrified to continue walking back in this building. But every time I did, I felt a little more comfortable. And I guess kind of the rest is history. I just got absolutely obsessed with it, and was there until we had to shut it down after it flooded and during COVID, and then moved the gym to the new place. And so I went from being a student and I was taking basically MMA classes. So I'd go like at noon, and Kama would teach it, and there would be a few other folks during the day. We had Sean Toulouse, one of the guys. So when I got my brown belt recently, it was Kama, myself, and Sean all got brown belts the same day. And he was one of the ones that I would take
Kama's only a purple belt.
Yeah, well, Kama's belt colors are one thing, but Kama has a sub of a black belt in the UFC on national television. So belt colors are a little misguided.
They are. They're deceiving. They're also deceiving. Perfect example. Kama's only had a purple belt. Like it just blows my mind because the dude has. How many fights does he have now? Total.
I don't even know.
Does he know?
Yeah, he knows. He could tell you the number.
He tracked that.
But I don't know if he knows. Yeah, he'd probably tell you how many amateur fights he has too. But he's just been fighting for so many years and has so much experience. It's absolutely
When I first
mind-blowing.
got introduced to Kama, he was like coming back into fighting, I guess. I'm like, coming back into fighting.
Oh, after his hip replacement? You mean? Yeah.
And like, he hasn't stopped. He just did karate combat. Was it karate combat?
Yeah, karate combat.
He's doing everything. I'm like,
well, he retired.
That's what I'm saying.
Right before his hip replacement, but I think those that knew him well knew that word didn't really apply.
Retired means I'm taking a break for now.
And he had a full hip replacement. Like he literally has a new hip. Like they drill down into your femur.
Is what
like,
you're saying.
Exactly. Well, to him, that's what it is. But this is how, like, you know how they say people are just built different? He's one of those guys. Like the day after his hip replacement surgery, I drove to his house just to check on him. And he was standing on the front porch. And I pulled up and I was like, what is going on? And he's on the front porch. He has these long compression socks on. He's standing up. And I'm like, what are you doing? Shouldn't you be in bed right now? You just had major surgery. He was like, you got to come check this out. I was like, what? He was like, come here. He was like, throw a jab at me. I was like, no, get in bed. What are you talking about? He was like, no. He goes, seriously. He got in his fight stance. He was like, throw a jab at me. And I'm like, I threw a jab at him. And he was like, what? And he went like this. And he goes, see that? He goes,
let's not see it again.
See how I shifted? Like, I didn't used to be able to do that. I always had to go back. So then I had to recover. So when people throw that punch, I had to go back and then come out. Now I'm here and look where I am. And he showed me the angle. He was like, I'm right there on your chin. He goes, oh yeah, I'm definitely fighting again. And I'm like, you're something else, man.
Like, we're not even there yet. Else. We're not even there yet. Let's talk about the apple juice you need to drink right now.
Exactly. Crazy.
Yeah, but see, I look at people like that and it just like kind of puts into perspective where you are. It's like, do I get to complain?
Yeah.
Like, no. This dude is still getting after it. Like when I turned 30, I was like, my life is over. My life is over. I'm 30 now. And then I go to the gym, rolling with 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, and I'm like, they would clean the floor with me. I'm like, well, okay, I got fucking 20 years of rolling then, like at least. You know, you started at 40.
Yeah.
How can I complain? Like, I'll have at least 10 years, if I keep up with it, at least 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, and then you see him and he's fighting and he's doing these big shows and promotions and you're like, man, like age is a number. As long as you're still getting after it, training, and like age is a number.
But it's surreal to me, man. Like you talk about imposter syndrome.
I tried to remember that word in the last episode. I couldn't think of it.
I can't forget that word. It's just constantly in my head. Imposter syndrome is real. You want to talk about crazy. Like, I walked in that gym when I was 40 years old. Kama Worthy, who was a professional fighter, who already had all this experience, who was my first coach. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, and I get a brown belt the same day as him. Now, I'm not putting myself on his level grappling.
No, arbitrary. It's arbitrary.
But just to say that we both are, and I highly, regardless of imposter syndrome, I believe I earned that belt, right? But the fact that I got it on the same day as Kama Worthy, I was like, what am I doing here? What in the world am I doing here?
That's awesome.
And Sean, who I mentioned before, who started jiu-jitsu way before me, who was like way more advanced, and you know, he was a college athlete, and he has that personality, you know, he's like the hammer. Like, he's very rarely been the nail. Like, that guy's just the hammer.
We all know a few of those.
He's our local mat enforcer if you need one, right? But again, he was one of the people that I looked up to more than anybody else through all my training. And every time I roll with him or sparred with him or anything, I was always just a little bit afraid. To this day, every time I roll with him, I'm a little bit afraid.
You're gonna have that.
What's gonna happen to me now?
That
right?
fear's respect.
Like, why haven't I lost this yet? I've known this guy for too long to be afraid of him. But again, and the way the kind of promotion ceremony went, because I've been running the program for a little while and teaching for a long time, I was kind of organizing everything, and I knew there were some people that deserved promotions, and I was adamant, you got to get Kama another belt. If I could just give him a black belt, I will, but like, we got to like rank him up, like he's got to get a brown belt, right? So I knew Kama was going to get a brown belt. I knew Sean was going to get a brown belt. Again, Sean got his purple belt the day I got my blue belt back at the old Fight Club. Like, so that's how far above me he was. So I was like, he hasn't been as consistent as me over the last several years, but like, he's there, right? So, and then we had some folks that like Craig Perry, who you probably have met. No, he was owed a blue belt for a while. Ever since he subbed a brown belt in the cage, I wanted to give him his blue belt. So I had to he doesn't come to my class very often, but
that's a call to action right there.
Well, his excuse is he's always working with Shaka. So we all have life goals. My life goal is to get Shaka Worthy in my jiu-jitsu class one day. So we'll see. But
what's Shaka focusing on?
Just beating people to death.
Blunt force trauma. That's what he's focused on. Blunt force trauma.
So I said Sean is the mat enforcer for jiu-jitsu. The gym enforcer is Shaka Worthy. He'll deny it. But anytime someone comes in and thinks they're tough, thinks they want to be a fighter, we can tell if you really want to be a fighter or not. Go spar Shaka for a while.
That's kind of not fair, though. You just throw him straight into the wolves' den.
Straight to the wolves, man. Sign the waiver.
But that's neat. You know how many times, especially being at the gym, you'll see people come in who maybe, and I came in off the street thinking, oh, I can do this. Never vocalized that. Like I was street smart enough not to do that. But people will come in who have street fight experience and they'll be like, I want to be on the fight team. You're like, oh, okay, hold on, wait a second. Like, and some people believe that that's what it takes. And I learned very quickly that fighting in the street and trained fighting, very different worlds.
Well, there's some amazing stories, and you get Kama on here. He can tell you some of them better than I can. Back in the old school Fight Club days with Adam and Mark Cherico and Kama and the whole crew, where they had open fight team practices. Like literally you bring people off the street.
That's one way to do it.
And sign a waiver. And there was a back room in the Fight Club which you could just close the doors and there's no windows back there. Nobody knows what's going on.
As soon as that door closes, you should know.
After the classes would be over and they'd have this open fight team class practices, and they weren't really practices. They were just sparring sessions to see how tough you really are. And those are the thing of legend.
How many people
for sure
never showed up again?
I can neither confirm nor deny that anyone didn't make it out of that room.
That's funny, but needed. Also needed, especially in this in this industry. Like, all right, like you can be any belt, you can be any experience, whatever. Like, go into a cage or go onto a mat.
Yep.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see where it's at. Talk about it all. Yeah, sure. Let's see.
Yep.
You know, and that oftentimes, and I get it, things happen in a cage. You know, like the best fighter may not always win, but he was the best in that moment.
Yep.
But like it doesn't lie.
Mats don't lie.
Mats don't
Cage
lie.
doesn't
Cage
lie.
don't lie.
Yep.
Ring don't lie. Like, show up.
Yeah.
Show out. How difficult was it being an outsider coming in to jiu-jitsu? Because oftentimes, you know, a lot of people who sit in that seat, they're like, oh, you know, I was in wrestling, or I did this. I did, like, a lot of people come in with a backing and experience. How was it coming from nothing? Like, how hard was it to transition and earn respect from the fellow people in the gym? I just want to take a second to shout out a few companies who believed in me. You know, these were one of our first official sponsors, so huge shout out. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Carbo Jewelers, established in 1997 on the values of honesty and integrity. Whether you're searching for the perfect piece, need expert repair services, visit Carbo Jewelers in Newark's Ironbound District, where your jewelry is always in safe hands. This episode is also brought to you by Continental Jewelers, proudly serving Hudson County, New Jersey since 1964. Whether you're seeking a timeless piece or need expert repairs, they've got you covered. Visit Continental Jewelers, your trusted source for all things jewelry. You can find them on Instagram at Carbo Jewelers or online at carbojewelers.com. Lastly, big shout out to Carbo Trading. Besides coins, precious metals, and jewelry, if it could be traded and collected, he's probably got it. They can be found on Instagram at carbo.trading. You can find all of our sponsors out online on our sponsor page at therelentlessproject.com.
Yeah, so real tough. It's something I feel like I still try to earn every day. And outsider's an interesting word. I use that word a lot. I think that's something that I've kind of embraced in my life. I've been an outsider in a lot of ways. Back to like being in Chicago or in Gary and being a hooper and the only Caucasian within miles, right? And you have to earn your way on that court, right? The first time you're going to have to wait a few games just to get on, but then after you play, you can get picked up, right? If people see that you actually know what you're doing. But it's different when you're going into a world where people are trying to kill each other, right?
Organized.
So, So not having that background and experience, like I said, I went from being like just a student at the Fight Club in the academy. I just was a very, very consistent student there all the time. MMA first, then finally picked up jiu-jitsu after a while. Lou Armazzani was actually the original jiu-jitsu coach back at Fight Club.
Lou.
So it was Lou, and Lou gave me my first couple stripes. Him and Mark Cherico, who that's another guy you need to talk to.
Hey, everyone's welcome. Everyone has a story.
Well, you know what's funny? And I'll sidebar for a minute. When I thought about coming on here, we first talked about it, just because of like who I am and what I'm interested in. The biggest thing I thought about is all the people that I need to tell you need to get on. Like those connections are magic to me, and there are so many fascinating people that I've met around here, and even in Pittsburgh, outside of Pittsburgh, that I think would be awesome. But Mark's definitely a character.
One thing I love about this is that right there. When someone comes on and like, you need to talk to this dude, and I'm like, bring him on, bring him. I love talking to people.
Yeah, I got a list.
And like, it's one thing to talk to people. I know, like talking to Britt, I loved it. Talking to Lucas, like. These are people I know, I train with, so like I kind of know their story, but being able to talk with someone I have you've only heard about, and I'm like, now they're in the seat and I get to learn as I go. Like that's where the true beauty lies, because those conversations can go anywhere, and I truly try to learn. I try to learn from people's experience, and how can I apply this to like being an outsider? I've been an outsider my whole life. Like when I got into sports, I wasn't playing peewee sports. I was never that guy. I jumped on a football practice, went right into 2-a-days right before tryouts. So like I was like, man, but I use that being an outsider as fuel. Like I need to earn this. I need to prove myself. And then when you get that, you can go one of two ways. I've earned this. This is mine. Or I need to fight to keep this because I'm not from this world. Even in jiu-jitsu, I'm not from this world. I've been doing it for 4 years, which is, if you look at time, it's not a long time. It's enough time to be like, okay, I'm a part of this now. Still, I look at this like, no, I need to keep this. I need to earn this every day.
Yep.
So that outsider mentality is something I embrace, like kind of like you were talking about. You have to embrace it.
Well, that time thing, it's so important. I mean, that you hear all the time in jiu-jitsu kind of cliches around just continue to show up and just put the time in, and that's what it is. But like I said, I started as a student. I'm still a student at the academy. I still take Kama's MMA classes. I'll still jump in Deep's class or Master White Fang or whatever. Like, I love it. But I look around now. At some point, I looked around. I was like, oh, you remember when blah, blah, blah? And someone would be like, no, I never went to the old academy. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. And there's very few people that are there now that even saw that old building, right? And I start thinking about, man, I've been doing this for like 10 years, like 11 years. And for like 4 years for you, that's a long time. That's a 4-year degree. You can get a college degree in 4 years, right?
I'm a bachelor's in jiu-jitsu.
Right. I've almost done 3 times, right, that time on the mats, consistently in practice going through. And, got to a point where I kind of look around, I'm one of the more experienced people, right? And I've been, in my profession, I've worked for the same company. I've worked for FedEx for 25 years. Started in Chicago, now in Pittsburgh. And I've managed people. I don't like using that term, lead people, manage people. I've been a manager for almost that entire time. I've always had direct reports, right? So that's just kind of come natural to me in terms of like teaching, coaching. It's something that I really enjoy doing. The more you understand what you're doing, the techniques, you're kind of comfortable with it. You've helped out a lot of the newer folks, right? It starts to come naturally, and it's something that I just gravitated toward. And when, somebody would be out, maybe Dave Sachs was going to be out for a day, or Kama needed somebody, he'd always ask, hey, you want to jump in and teach a class? I'll be like, yeah, I think so. And then I would like spend hours going over one technique for a long time so I could figure out how to get it right and not mess up, right? And then when Dave Sachs, who again, that's who gave me my my brown belt, and actually when he was training for his black belt a couple summers ago, he was going to go back to Chicago to Brazilian top team and test for his black belt, and he said he needed to do some kind of one-on-one training and just sharpen the sword, right? And asked if I would be willing to do that with him. And it was like one of the biggest honors of my life, honestly, have somebody asking me to do that.
Crazy how it comes full circle.
Right, yeah, so he asked me if I would like spend time with him just going over techniques. So we would meet like once or twice a week, and we'd each pick 2 techniques and we'd drill each for 15 minutes, right? Just drill. Did it over entire summer. And then we would roll sometimes, but we didn't roll too much. We did a lot more drilling. And my jiu-jitsu got so much better in that time just because, one, he's such a good teacher and could like show me so much, but just that much concentrated drilling, which you don't even get that much in a class, right?
I prefer drill days.
Yeah.
Because you're forced to hone in.
Yep.
And I realized, like, you know, especially like being in the New Year's, right? When the New Year's, people are like, oh, my New Year's resolution is to do this. New. It's always something new, something. And like, I was sitting down and putting my goals down. I'm like, you know what? Like, I need to hone in and focus on what I'm already doing.
Yep.
You know, and I feel like that's where you get the best results is when you're like, I need to focus on, boom, this. I need to hit this hard. You know, like drill days are so important and so overlooked.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I talk to a lot of people who train jiu-jitsu and they love open mat. It's free form, right? You just go in and
everybody does. Yeah. Yeah, you should love
it's
open mat.
cool.
It's great.
Yeah, it's cool. But it's like if you want to, when I talk to people, like they say you want to increase your jiu-jitsu experience and knowledge, like go into the open mat with a purpose.
Yep.
With something in mind that you want to focus on. And that's like a metaphor to life. Like, what do you want to get good at? You got to focus on that. You want to be an entrepreneur? Cool. There's something there you need to focus on that's going to push that goal.
Yep.
You want to get better at jiu-jitsu. What does that mean? You need to hone in on something and push that.
Yeah. I think like the things that made the biggest difference in my jiu-jitsu, other than kind of that one period of time when I was doing that much just focused drilling with someone that's that good, with Dave Sachs, who had that much knowledge, is that kind of mentality, right? So years ago, when I was a blue belt, I was really into triangles. I figured out the triangles were pretty good. I was good at inverting. This is kind of my game, right? And so I went down that rabbit hole and I started looking at different setups and how do I get to this position, and got to the point where all my rolling partners, when I would get to a position where I could throw a triangle, they're just like backing out, like, all right, start over again, right? And I had to shift. And so I was really good at triangles. And so I was feeling good about my jiu-jitsu, right? But it was pretty narrow. So I made a conscious decision to go, okay, I have to do something different. I have to do something opposite. I have to get on top. So now it's just like focus my entire role on getting on top, being on top, staying on top. And then from there, I found kind of something that I gravitated toward, which was head and arm chokes. So Darce is my absolute favorite choke in the world, but Darce, anacondas, arm in guillotines, head and arms.
I can't be Darced.
Sounds like a challenge.
No, I was in Vegas, not to segue, but I was in Vegas with my buddy who fucking Darce is his thing. Like he can get a Darce from anywhere. I don't know how. And I was like, I don't think I could be Darced, like because of my frame. And he's a smaller dude in comparison to me. He's like, I can Darce you. And I'm like,
Couldn't do it.
Let's try. Let's try. And he put it in there, and then I just framed my arm in the back. And because my shoulder is so wide, that gives me enough space. And he's like, oh, fuck, I've never thought of that. And I was like, I'm not trying to say I can't be Darced, but like it's very hard because of the way I'm built.
Yeah.
And I was like, now while you're applying the Darce, maybe if you shoulder my arm in where I can't do that, like I'm fucked.
Yep.
So like then we started, like we're in the hotel room before CJI, like he's Darcing the fuck out of me the whole time, and like I'm defending it. We're off the beds and on the floor and shit, and like, but I don't even know how I got into that. Oh, Darce, yeah. So focus drilling.
Yep.
Very important.
Yeah, and then and like I said, I made myself go into that rabbit hole, and so then it was just nothing but Darces and anacondas, and then it was Peruvian necktie, and what else can I do out of this? Right.
That fuels growth, man. Like you're comfortable in one area.
Yep.
You can only grow so much there before you become stale. So now you have to almost not abandon it, but like switch perspectives and be like, this is all new to me. Now I have to hit this hard.
But that's the amazing thing about jiu-jitsu. It's one of the multiple amazing things about jiu-jitsu. I'm 11 years in, brown belt, and I have 2 things, right? Like obviously there's more in that realm, but I have the head and arm choke from the top, and then I have the triangle choke from the bottom, and those are the things that I'm to a point where in a competitive role, I look for one thing, and this is it. That's what I want. No, that was weird. Just like you did a gang sign earlier. I'm throwing stuff up. That was not me. But all I'm looking for is an arm extended by their head, right? Because if I can grab that with my arms or my legs, I'm going to work towards one of those things that I love to do. Right? And you'll find it everywhere. Now you just got to figure out how to bait them to reach their arm out, right?
And that's the game.
Whether that's a sweep or whatever else, right? So, and then the cool thing is a lot of times you're drilling with the same people and they know that's what you're looking for. So then that makes them better because now the last thing they're going to do with rolling with me is stick their arm out, right? So now I got to figure out how do I get it out. Like, so anyway, it's a giant puzzle.
It's chess, right? Because if you look at chess, when I first played chess, I would just move pieces. And then whatever I had there, I'd go off that. But when I learned, like, people who are very good at chess, they are essentially trying to get you to move a certain way by their moves so they can implement a strategy they already have in mind.
Yeah, and they know more than you do.
Way more.
They've played way more games of chess than you, so they know all the options you have.
And
right?
they're going for something specific.
Yep.
And they're playing off of how you're going to move to get you to where they want you so they can implement their strategy. That's jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, one of the best compliments I ever received was one of our amateur fighters, guy who's one of the most consistent students that I have, Tyler Covelli. He's had a few amateur fights. Actually, he was supposed to fight in this last 247 and had a broken arm that he was trying to fight with. Text me a little while before the fight and said, "Hey, I just found out I got a broken arm. What do you think I should do? Should I really still want to fight?" And I'm like, "Dude, no, you can't fight with a broken arm." But anyway, he told me one time that every time I roll with you, I feel like I'm playing chess because everything I do, there's going to be like a consequence to it, right? He was like, it drives me crazy, but yeah, that was pretty cool. One of the, like I said, coolest things somebody could say.
And that's where the knowledge comes in. Like people who are good at technique, not really focused on principle. It's like, well, you have to think about the principle of what you're doing, because you can know a lot of technique, but if you don't know the principles in the application and the consequences of the application, someone who does is going to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And like, I'll roll with a black belt and I'm like, how am I getting this? And then it's gone. I was like, oh, because they were allowing me to go here to help me train. And as soon as I got here, they took it away because they knew what I was going to do. And it kind of makes you feel very small. Kind of feels
for sure.
very small when you're not at that level and you think you're there and you're like, oh man, I'm good. And then you roll with someone who so much knowledge and you're like, oh yeah, I'm just scraping the surface.
I got to roll with really actually cool kind of name drop celebrity shout out when it was in Austin a few months ago, and went to 10th Planet and just showed up for a class, and then they have like 2-hour open mats that are like, what was it, like 7-minute rounds, like 30-second rest, 2 hours straight. And there's like 50 people on the mat just going, and everybody just got rash guards on. You don't know who anybody is. You don't know nothing, right? So I got an opportunity to roll with Lex Friedman, who's actually like my favorite podcaster. I'm a big podcast guy, obviously. Next to the Relentless Project.
I was about to say.
My second favorite podcast. But anyway,
Appreciate it.
Lex is phenomenal.
I'll just cut the first part out. We'll leave that.
And he was rolling, and I actually, when he had rolled several rounds, he was like taking a break, and I went over and just said, hey, I just wanted to say I'm a big fan. Really appreciate your approach to life, your philosophy, and just been listening for a long time, and just thanks for everything you do, right? And he was just like really cool, and hey brother, thank you. Where are you from? Are you from around here? You're like, how long you been training? Like, we talked for a long time. Told him I had started a podcast. He told me all about his. He works on his by himself. Nobody works on it. It's like yours. He does all the editing, does everything in a room.
It goes to show you, like, wow. Especially like a podcast. Like mine, I feel like it's not big. I can.
Yeah.
But then you see someone with a huge platform doing the same thing, and it's just reps, man.
Yeah.
He's doing the same thing I'm doing at a much larger scale.
Yeah, for sure.
That's crazy.
But anyway, and then we were just talking for a while, and he was like, "Are you still training? Do you want to roll?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure." And we rolled, and it was that feeling. Like, he was super cool and controlled, and we were going, and I got in a couple positions, felt kind of good. And at some point during the roll, I just realized to myself, I was like, "Oh, he's playing with me right now."
Yeah.
Like
he's training, he's
like,
learning.
Yeah, he could have, like, there was something he could have done, and like all of a sudden he did, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, he's not really going," right? And then at the end we were done, and he was like, "Hey, thanks for the role." And he said, "Your defense is really good." He's like, "You have a really good base. Your defense is great." And I'm like, "Thank you." Like felt like a backhanded
Andy
compliment.
just hit me with that, man. Like we were doing the tap cancer out, and I haven't grappled since May, since my injury. So I was like, oh, I went in with James, who he's a buddy of mine who's battling cancer right now, and he's like, hey, like I want to do this roll, but he has to roll very specifically because he has like bone lesions and all this stuff. So he picks his partners very sparingly. So I was like, oh, I'll go with you because I got to be very cautious with how I roll, having this torn meniscus. Well, it's repaired meniscus now. So we're rolling, and Andy's like, oh, let's roll one. He's like, I understand your knee and stuff. Like, I'll look out for it. And I'm like, dude, I haven't rolled in forever. Like, just throwing that out there. We're going. And I'm like, oh, I'm doing pretty well. At the end, he's like, oh, dude, your frames are great. Your defense is good. And I'm like, yeah, but you beat me. He's like, oh, yeah. I mean, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, but
I'm supposed to beat you.
Yeah. Are you, though? Jiu-jitsu is supposed to be fair. But it's cool to, like, roll with someone. Like, especially, that's why I love the jiu-jitsu world. Like, you get these big, high-profile grapplers, but on the mat, you're both just grapplers.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it's the only sport that I can think of where you can actually get that close to, and obviously Lex is not a big competitor. He's just a celebrity because of his podcast, right? But I know he's been a black belt for years and has trained with some really high-level guys. Like, he trains with the B-team guys or Gordon Ryan and folks like that, right? So he knows what he's doing, right? And he used to compete a lot. But where else in the world can you go train with your favorite athletes?
Yeah, like
high-level guys.
Have you played ball with LeBron?
Right.
Like, it's just, it's unheard of. That's true.
Yeah, go run out and, hey, maybe the Steelers will go throw the ball around with me. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't happen. You're not gonna do that. But in jiu-jitsu, you can go to their gym, right? You may not roll with the guy, right? But
maybe you will.
Right? And I train every day with my favorite fighter.
I'm gonna say, yeah,
you know what I mean?
You do that every day.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, like, that's one of the coolest things about our gym, about the academy, right? Hey, that's Kama Worthy, right?
Dude, I remember watching him on TV, and then he was at 247. Not to take away from 247, I'm like, dude, he's fighting here. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
He's fought in all kinds of promotions. Well, he's just another dude.
Yeah.
And then when you talk to him, you're like, he's fucking cool as shit. Like, we were talking the last 247 about the karate stuff, the karate combat, and I'm like, dude, I want to do an episode right now, right here with you, because like just his mindset and approach to everything. Even that, he was talking about the kick and his experience there and how he was learning on the go, and I'm like, that says a lot about a person.
Yep.
He put himself in that environment, hard, challenging. The amount of rule sets he's fought in, it blows my mind alone. But he doesn't shy away from a challenge.
Yeah.
And if you can take his mindset and apply it to life, how many people are doing that?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, that's why I love jiu-jitsu and MMA and fighting. Like, you take that mindset, what it takes to be a fighter, what it takes to be a competitor, and you apply it to your career. Like, how many people at FedEx take that mentality and are applying it to what they do as a manager,
right,
or as whatever the roles are there? And not a lot of people.
Well, I tell people all the time, like, what I do outside work is so much harder than what I do at my job, right? There's always going to be challenges at work, and we solve complex problems all the time. We're a world-class organization, right? But no one's trying to punch me in the face. Yeah. No one's trying to strangle me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have someone as big as you on top of me trying to, like, literally smother me. You know what I mean?
Like, is my order?
That doesn't happen. So if I can get through that, all the times that I have one of the great things that I love about jiu-jitsu, it gives you an opportunity to quit whenever you want to. You can quit just not walking back in, right? I'm not going to go there anymore, or I'm not going to do that today because I don't feel like it. But then once you get there, you start rolling, and there are opportunities to quit all the time.
All you got to do is...
all it is tap, and it's over, right? But do I need to tap right now? Could I make it a few more seconds? Is there a way out? Is there a frame here? Is there, you know what I mean? Like that, I just absolutely love it. And I think it's applicable to so many aspects of life.
It's a great way to build perseverance. It's a good way to... How many places in life can you do something hard like that? Like, unless you're in an organized sport. Or there's not many avenues in life where you're forced, you're willingly going into a violent situation and figuring it out on the go.
And although I feel like jiu-jitsu is the best form of self-defense for sure, but jiu-jitsu is like diet MMA, right? Like, and I've heard you talk about on the podcast before on how you had a couple amateur fights, enough to know that I'm not about this life, right?
It ain't for me.
And I'm not either. And it's not just because I could use the excuse, I got started late. If I got started earlier, maybe I'd be fighting in a cage. I would never have been fighting in a cage. All right, I know that about myself. From getting punched in the face by John DeJesus years ago and having my cartilage smashed to the side of my head and having to have surgery to have it replaced, like, I don't ever want to do that again, right? Like that's just not, it's just not for me, right? But being around people who it is for them, and they are about that life, and they embrace it, and they attack it, and they go after it. And then having those people at this point, again, all that time that I've spent in there and kind of gained this respect, and I have those people coming to me, asking me for advice, wanting me to be in their corner, right? That gives me goosebumps just saying it. You know what I mean? Even one of these amateur fighters, right? They've only been around for a little bit. They want to fight, whatever, but they're going to go in a cage and they're going to lock the door and there's going to be somebody trying to murder them. If not for a referee in there, there would be a murder committed, right? And they trust me enough to give them advice on that, right? That there's no greater honor to me.
Even just having this podcast, because I dabble, and I say I dabble in the MMA world. People will be like, "Hey, I got a fight come up. Like, what advice can you give me? What, you want life advice? I can give you life advice, but if you're asking me for fight advice, you got coaches who have more experience in the palm of their hand that I can give you, or like a couple of our style fighters. They experienced losses, not this one, but the last card. Like I find myself in the back, like we're having life conversations about losses and how right now it doesn't matter. Like, how are you going to bounce back? And it's like. That's what but like, it's a community, man. It's a community. Yeah. Like, you don't have to be the best fighter to offer advice. You can be a life guide or a life coach.
It's funny. There was a time when and it was several years ago, and Kama was sparring at the old Fight Club. He was sparring somebody, and I don't even remember who it was. But after the session was over, I had noticed a couple things because I'd seen so many of his sparring sessions and trained with him so often. I noticed something he was doing, and I don't remember what it was. And I was like, "Hey, do you mind if I tell you something?" He was like, "Yeah." And I told him, I was like, I'm nobody. I kind of noticed that you were doing this thing. It was a tendency." And he was like, "Look, man, nobody's above taking advice from anybody." And he was like, "You've been around long enough. Speak your mind, right?" And I've had several fighters say that, come to me and be like, "Hey, be vocal. Tell me what you see." Like when I'm just watching sparring.
Because what you see might not be what someone else has saw.
Yeah, and I've come to see that. I've come to understand that the fact that I've seen that much, specifically with Kama and Shaka, and back when DeJesus was there, and Craig and all these, I've seen so many of their rounds, right? And Patton was there for a long time, right? That experience is, you can't put a price on that. There's a real value to be able to tell you, here's the tendencies, here's what's probably going to happen in here, here's what happens to most people. With Kama, it's you get caught watching the show. It's way easier said than done. I understand that, but what gets people when they get in front of Kama is there's so much going on. He's so unorthodox. He's coming.
I hate it.
He has head movement. He's throwing punches from different angles. He's constantly looking for something, and you see people get kind of frozen watching it, and they're not moving their head, and they've got their guard, but they're frozen, and he can do whatever he wants, right? You have to do something to get him to react, and that's the same thing with a lot of high-level fighters. But yeah, again, kind of going back to that, just the fact that I'm able to offer some sort of advice that folks take as a value is something that I can't tell you how much it means to me.
Because now you corner your coach. Like, how surreal is that you're trusted to, people who are not in the MMA world. I mean, people in the MMA world can understand, but the people outside, they don't understand how important that seat is.
Yeah.
And I could never grasp that when I was fighting. To listen to a coach when I'm getting punched in the face, it was very difficult. So be able to hone in on that alone is a talent, it's a skill. But that seat's very important, and now you sit in that seat for people.
Yeah, I tell you a kind of cool story. This was way before I ever cornered anybody, But I used to, at the old, and this might not even been 247. It may have been like Pinnacle or something. But I don't know. It was back at I think at the Isoplex in South Point. It might have been 247. But anyway, it was one of John DeJesus's fights. I remember that. And I used to just kind of sneak back to the back. I'd have an Academy shirt on, and I wasn't a coach. I was just part of the crew. And I would just walk back. And I always tell people all the time, one of the best secrets in life is act like you're supposed to be somewhere. And usually people won't ask questions. It's an advantage of being a little older too. Like the guy at the door is way younger than me. He sees me with the shirt. He walked by. He's not asking me any questions, right? So I used to just walk back and hang out in the back because I thought it was cool. I'm not here to hang out and be a fan. I'm back here with the boys,
team,
right? With the team, watching them do their thing. Warm up. What can I do? Can I get you water? Whatever, right? So the old athletic commission, I think it was Serb, that had come in, and there were a bunch of people back in the locker room at one point. And I had done that for a while, and I was kind of close to some of these guys. And he came in and made a loud announcement, like, if you are not in a corner or a fighter, get the F out, like now, right? And everybody's like kind of scattering, right? And I remember like DeJesus, and he was warming up with Chris Williams, and he like put his hand on my shoulder. He was like, don't go anywhere. I'm like, all right. And I just kind of stayed there, and then everybody like cleared out, and then it was just the corners and the fighters, whatever, and it was good, right? And that moment, I kind of felt like I belonged, right? Like I'm serving a purpose, and that's what I've kind of always like strove for. What is my value here? Like what
can I bring to the table?
And to me, when it comes to cornering, like yeah, of course, if the fight goes to the ground, I feel like I have enough experience to tell you how to intelligently defend yourself, how to maybe sweep somebody, how to finish a submission, all of that stuff. That's super important. But I think even the bigger value that I kind of try to bring is that. Almost like you said, life experience, right? You kind of said it a little cavalier, like, what, you want some life experience from me?
Yeah.
But that's really it. Like a lot of times, especially newer fighters, it's overwhelming, man. It's a lot. I try to remind people to breathe.
Dude, I puked.
When you're in the tunnel about to come out, like do some deep breathing exercises. Get yourself centered. Realize that you want to be here, right? That most people, all these people in the audience, they've never done this before. They'd love to be you right now. This is what you trained for. You've done all the hard work. Like just be, like go have fun, right? And then in between rounds, same thing. You got to breathe. You got to get your breath back. You got to get your heart rate down. You got to drink a little water. Just be in the moment, right? Enjoy this.
It's the little things.
Enjoy this, right? Because that if you just get too fired up on like how am I gonna intelligently punch this guy in the face? You know what I mean? Like, you got to bring yourself back a little bit.
No, that's very important. That's very important because that's the stuff that's oftentimes overlooked, right? Because you have a corner who's a striking specialist. You have a corner who's a grappling specialist. You know, to have someone who's going to remind, like, hey, bro, that other person, they're just as scared as you are.
Yep.
They feel the same fear. Maybe they're not showing it as much as you are, but you both willingly got into this. You both did the same work. You know, I'm not going to say you worked harder, Like, you both prepared for this. Now it's showtime. Like that, those little things that are overlooked. Like, Mike Wilkins ain't going to go in there and be like, hey, bro, breathe.
Right.
He's going to be like,
yeah.
3, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
All over
Yeah.
the place. But that's his role, is to get you grappling ready, right?
Yep.
Like, this other coaches get you strike ready. Like, Ish is going to get you life ready.
Life ready, baby. And it's funny because different fighters need different things too. Like Kama has said at this point, he a lot of times, depending on what the fight is, but he just wants people that he's comfortable with, but then he also knows what he needs, right? And that's why you see Shaka in his corner a lot, because Shaka will tell him things no one else will. He needs someone to, like, I remember one of the not his last fight, but the one before that, the last one, 247, I think, it was so funny. What was he doing that he I think he was jumping out too much or lunging too much or whatever, and Shaka just screamed, "Stop doing dumb shit!" Like we're not doing that. We're not
like Kama,
like,
having
yes.
that relationship, understands exactly.
He knew
what
exactly
he's
what he said. He knew, but that's how Shaka's going to talk to him. He's going to give him, like, it's time to go kick somebody's ass now, right? Like, this is what we're doing. We're choosing violence, and unfortunately, that guy's at the end of it, right? And that's not my personality, right? I have the other end of it, right? So anyway,
it's a good dynamic.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember watching. I don't know why this reminded me. I was watching a video where a guy's like, "Hey man, like my groin. I think I hurt my groin," and the coach is like, "So what?
Shut up.
So what? Deal with it." Like, but like another coach may not say that. They might be more tactful and be like, "Hey, okay, well, like, do you think you can do this or this technique, or we're gonna start backing off?" This is just like, fucking deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, you got 5 minutes left. You're gonna deal with it. And the dude literally is like, okay, goes in there, and I think he actually wins. But like that kind of like that reset of like, hey, dude, you chose to be here. That's the consequence, and you're gonna deal with it.
Yep.
You know, kind of like recentering them. I don't know why I thought of that. It's like, stop doing dumb shit. Bet. All right, we're here. How do you balance? Because obviously your jiu-jitsu is very important. How do you balance? You're a big family man. You have a full-time career I'm sure it's not just 40 hours a week.
Yep.
And you still maintain training. Like, what advice will you give people? Will you tell people who maybe they're trying to do a lot of things at once and they just need to figure out like how to do them all efficiently?
Yeah. I definitely don't have any secrets. I'm not a guru of any stretch of the imagination, but I've heard you say it before that everybody has the same number of hours in a day.
It's crazy when you think of it.
Right? Like, it's all about priorities. I don't know that mine are right, but I know what mine are, right? And you have to figure out what's important to you. To me, this jiu-jitsu thing, this training thing, health, fitness, to me, mental health is hugely important, and I put this all in the same category because I think the mats are therapy to a lot of people, and I'm definitely one of those. I'm not the same person when I'm not doing it regularly, right? So that's just a priority that I put on anything, whether it's it's a opportunity at work, whether it's something else going on. I know that I have some, and do I miss class for my kids have something going on? For sure, I'm needed somewhere
Priority
else.
changes.
Absolutely, priorities change. But I know that my schedule says I'm teaching jiu-jitsu Mondays and Wednesdays at 6, Saturdays at 1. Right now, again, something comes up, kid's got a tournament, whatever, I get it covered, do whatever. But I'm going to make those classes. And well, what if you don't feel good that day? Or back before I was teaching, if I was just going to class, what if I don't feel good that day? Well, then it's even more important to go. Like, it's just like working out. If you're gonna spend 2 hours in the gym every morning because you want to look a certain way or you want to feel a certain way or you've got goals you want to hit, well, those are non-negotiables. Kobe Bryant used to say that a lot. I make a non-negotiable contract with myself every year, and whatever I agree to, I sign it, and that's it, and it happens, right? Now, am I as dedicated as Kobe Bryant? For sure not, right?
For sure not.
However, there are things, fitness, nutrition, longevity, jiu-jitsu. I kind of hit it with my ring to emphasize it there. Coaching, all those things are priorities, just like my work, just like my family, right? Obviously, the number one priority is going to be my family. So whatever they need, I'm going to be there, right? I'm going to be there to support. My daughter plays rugby. That's
badass.
Yeah, the Moon girls rugby team is pretty amazing. A sport was never around at all until she started doing it.
Intramural rugby. Dude, I'm like, these people are insane.
It's different, man, but they are amazing. And I'll say, shout out to her coach, man. Rocky is the best example of a not just youth coach, but a organized sports coach that I've ever seen. He creates this environment where these girls feel like they're part of a family and they all have each other's back, to the point where my daughter played youth rugby under him, and then when she got into high school, by the time she walked into that school her freshman year, she felt like she had this whole pack of girls that had her back, right? And all the people were pretty scared of the rugby girls anyway, so that helped.
With good reason.
But it really cool. So just to see that, and she's just fallen in love with it. She may play in college. She's looking a little bit at some of the different schools, what's going on. My son is 13. He plays basketball, which I'm always pretty happy with that choice.
Got to pass the torch somehow.
Yeah.
You're going to be the parent living through him now.
I try as hard as I can not to. I kind of pump the brakes and let him do his thing. I did help coach last year, but now he made the 7th grade team, which was one that, like, the first thing he really had to work hard for. He had to beat out some of his old teammates and some of the guys who were ahead of him last year. And so he did that this year, which was really awesome to see him doing it. He's got a nice little fire jumper and does his thing. So anyway, when they have stuff going on, and we travel, problem with rugby is we travel a lot, right? Because there's just not a lot of teams, so you have to go all over the place to play. But yeah, the whole training thing, it's a non-negotiable for me.
I think training bleeds into all those other aspects of life, though. Like your kids see you, no offense, at this age, still getting at that was a little slightly. No, but because parents were always going to be older.
Yep.
Right? We're always old. Like, I'm 31, and if you ask my daughter, I'm old. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, dude, look at it. And I get petty. But I'm like, look at the parents of all your other friends. They can be my father.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You have a young lad of a dad, okay? But, like, kids look up to us, and they see us, and they see you training. They see you coaching and mentoring, and that bleeds into your family life. It creates this, like, you know, because you bring that back home, and one way or another, that comes back home.
Yep.
You mentioned jiu-jitsu being this, like, therapeutic thing for you. You know, one thing we can talk about, you're getting ACL surgery.
I am.
Like, how does that make
Friday.
you feel? Yeah, Friday.
So I'm already a little freaked out by
Dude,
it. I don't like medical procedures. I know they're necessary. I love doctors, love the fact that they exist. But if there's like one phobia in my life, it's needles. Passed out more times than I can care.
See, I don't pass out. I just
about.
freeze up.
Oh, I get the, like, room starts spinning and I get hot. It's just a horrible
My biggest,
feeling.
when I went through my surgery, my whole thing, when they put you to sleep.
Yeah,
What's
the
that called?
anesthesia.
Anesthesia.
Yeah.
The anesthesia, and the fact that I was going to have to get an
The
IV.
Oh, the IV drives me crazy. Last time I did one, they couldn't find the vein, and it was they were like two different techs trying to, like, find them. Oh, it keeps collapsing, and you have great veins. I don't know why we can't get it.
That makes me feel great.
And I'm just sweating profusely, and, like, we're gonna have to try something new. You're gonna have to put my feet up because I'm gonna be gone in a minute.
Dude, I'm sitting there, and then shout out to the nurses at AHN. She's like looking at me, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I don't do needles." Like, she's like, "Oh, but you have all these tattoos." And I'm like, they're completely different. Like, I think it's the needle going into the vein that does it for me.
There's something about a syringe, and the other thing is, and it's not just syringes, because I'll tell you, I've had my ear drained a couple times, and when I did it at the fight club or at the academy, on the mats. Once we used to have a vet technician, Kate, who I used to train with, who brought something to lidocaine to numb it, and then a needle, and she drained it, and another one by Nicole, Kama's wife, who's a nurse, like right on the side of the mats after class, just like rubbed a little alcohol in there, pulled it out, and I had no problem, not even a shake, man, because it's the environment. It's the whole sterile hospital environment and the smell of the alcohol.
Dude, I get bad styes, and it swells my eye. And I don't go into urgent care because they usually just go away. But this one, like, swole my eye shut. I still have it, dude. It's over a month. And it was like, dude, just disgusting. To the point, one of my episodes, I had sunglasses on because I was like, dude, you don't want to see this. Like, I was like, I'll show you before. And I showed him. He's like, yeah, keep them on. But she comes in there. She's like, I'm going to have to try and pop it. I'm like, oh, dude, I would blink and I'd get a headache. And she's in there squeezing.
Ugh.
And I'm like, it wouldn't pop. And sorry, like, I should probably put a warning disclaimer for this. She's like, I gotta. She's like, I gotta pop it with a needle. I'm like, no. I was like, thank you.
I'm out.
I'm leaving. She's like, no, stop. And, like, she gaslit me. She's like, you're big, you're strong. Like, this is gonna be nothing. You won't even feel it. I'm like, I'm sorry. My eye is throbbing right now from you squeezing it. You're gonna poke it. She's like, lay back. Yeah, like, lay back. Well, now I'm like, ridden with fear. I'm like, so I lay back because what am I going to tell this nurse, right? I lay back. She gets out a needle and she's like, okay, don't move. So she went in there and I didn't feel anything because she was a saint. But I felt the pop of the pus and stuff. And she pulls out that needle And dude, I could have passed out just seeing the needle. I'm like, oh,
No, thank you.
got a lot of stuff out. But like, I'm sitting in my surgery, and this nurse, she sits down, she like grabs my hand, and she's talking to me, and she's like, just look away. I'm like, I can't. I have to. It's like a train wreck. I have to look at it. So I'm sitting there, and she's talking to me. She's not even looking. She's like, no, and like, so she's like, okay, well, when you're comfortable, we'll do it. But so tell me, how do you feel about the surgery? And I'm like, know what she's doing. So I can't really think. And I usually tell people when I'm giving blood, I'm like, don't talk to me because I can't respond. I'm frozen.
Yep.
I'm trying to talk to her and stuff. And the next thing you know, she's like, oh, see, all done. And I look and I'm like, all right. I was like, oh, it's in. And then she pulls the needle out and the thing's still in there, right? And I thought it was a needle. Like, I always thought it was a needle still in there. Mm-hmm. And she's like, it's done. Like, why are you still? And I'm like, I have to leave this on the entire surgery? She's like, yeah, it's a little plastic tube. You won't even feel it's in there. And I'm like, it's plastic. She's like, it's a catheter. It's not like, you don't have a needle in there. I was like, oh, I felt immediate relief. I was like, oh, I thought it was a needle in there. And she's like, oh, and by the way, what I'm going to give you, you're going to love it. Dude, when I tell you whatever they gave me.
Oh, that stuff is awesome.
Dude, she's like, okay, boom, I feel it. She's like, all right, that's all. I'm like, that's it? She's like, that's it. And then next thing you know, I wake up with an apple juice. Surgery's done.
Magic.
I was like,
Magic.
oh man, I'm like, are we done? She's like, yeah, we're done. You tried to break out of the hospital. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, we told you were done, and you tried to get off the bed, but don't worry, you were just joking. You're fine. The nurses love you. I didn't remember any of that. I'm just holding an apple juice, and I'm like, oh. She's like, oh, and you threatened to take Dr. Akavon's face off. So he comes in, he's like, what's up? Like, daps me up. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. Apparently, he's like, oh, no, I told you we took your leg. So you looked at me, laughed, and said, you're going to take my face. And then you fell back asleep. And I was like,
that's funny.
What? So that's the stuff that freaks me out. What I'm going to say when I don't know, needles and the anesthesia. But when I tell you, I woke up feeling like I could run a marathon. Probably the best sleep I've ever had because I don't remember any of it. Dude, so.
Well, the non-negotiable I talked about earlier applies to my wife when it comes to the cauliflower ear thing. So that's why when you were like, no thanks about getting it drained, like that was not an option.
Oh, you didn't have, yeah.
She was like, when I first started training, and she was like, you're not going to get those ugly ears, are you? And I was like, nah. She was like, well, just so you know. She was like, if you do, she was like, how do you get rid of it? And I was like, well, you have to drain it. And I was like, she was like, well, that's what you're going to do. Like, you absolutely had. And the first time it, like, showed up a little bit, it was like my ear was swollen. And she saw it right away. She was like, what is that? She was like, what's going on with your ear? And I was like, oh, it's just a little. She was like, you need to take care of that right now. Like, so, like, every time it's happened.
No games.
Every time it's happened, I had to get it taken care of right away. It wasn't a big deal because it was right there.
See, like, if you grapple, you're like, that's like a trophy, right?
Well, yeah, and even it was funny because Sachs actually said to me the last time I got it, he goes like, oh, and you got the good kind too, because it was on the outside. Like, usually they get it on the inside and it kind of affects your hearing or whatever. People don't like that, but the one on the outside that like looks cool and like it was swollen up good. He was like, you just keep it. I was like, yeah, it's not
negotiable,
not an option for me. But it's funny, a similar story about kind of our fear of needles and stuff. So back when I told you years ago, I had this situation where shouldn't have been, but I was sparring with John DeJesus and I got clocked in the nose, had to have surgery to have my nose, had to get like tubes stuck in my nose, and they had to put stand my cartilage back up and then put stents in there to hold it together. It was horrible. It was like the worst, most uncomfortable feeling for a week, having that stuff in your face. But anyway, when I went to get it checked, the ear, nose, and throat doctor, my wife was with me, and she started talking about, she's looking at it, and she was like, oh, I can't fix this. She was like, you're going to have to go to my specialist. She was like, I'm good at my job, but I can't fix what you've got going on here. You're going to have to go. She started talking about what they were going to do. Again, room started spinning. I started like, I was out, man. She was like, I had smelling salts under my nose. She was waking me up. And it was funny because she was like, I have to point out the irony of this. And I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, you let professional fighters throw punches at your face in a cage, but little old me starts talking about a procedure, and you can't stand it. So my wife still loves to bring that story up to this day. She thinks it's so funny. But,
well, it goes to show you what fear is.
Yeah.
Like, what is fear?
Yeah.
it's like it's
You
put
make
on
it.
us.
You make
Yeah,
it.
We make it because I'll go roll with guys or get punched in the face when I'm helping someone spar or whatever. It sucks. I don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it's like something I have to do, right? And I have to get knee surgery, and I'm like, well, no, can't do the IV. And I'm like, well, you're gonna get the IV, and then you're just like,
Yeah. People look at what I do and call it courage, right? And I tell people I'm terrified all the time, right? But whether it's training with somebody like Kama or, several months ago, I went and watched Chase Boyd get his black belt, which was really cool.
he's coming on.
Got to go. He really.
Yeah, he messaged me. He was
that'll
like,
be fun.
He
Chase
just
is my
posted
guy.
something. He was like, he sent me. He was like, hey, how do you feel about this caption? It was like 10 years ago or something. I got diagnosed with autism. Doctor was so dumb he misspelled the dog. Got that dog in him or something.
Oh, he's gonna think about this interview a whole lot. I can tell you that. Like Chase is my guy, man. I've actually cornered Chase a couple times. He is who he says he is, right? There's nothing fake there about that guy. But
He was twerking after the fight.
Oh yeah. Just when in his leopard shorts.
Yeah, like you just went through a brawl and you're twerking.
Yeah. Well, I can't. How did that come up? I was talking about going to see him get his black belt. Why did I mention that?
See, my ADHD kicked in. We were talking about.
Oh,
Fear.
I went to that event, and there was a 2-day seminar with Kyle Terra out in Gracie Baja in Cranberry, and roll with Dempsey. And I hadn't seen Dempsey in years. I've known that guy a long time and love that dude, but don't get a chance to train with him too often. Don't get to the Mat Factory very often, or have never actually trained at the Mat Factory, but
Don't.
see them
Don't make me
see them
puke.
all the time. Yeah, Isaac tells me I can come out whenever I want, but I'm kind of scared of it. But anyway,
Dude, it's like it's a lab of dogs.
Yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
foaming at the mouth,
For
waiting
sure.
for you.
But like rolling with Dempsey is one of those things that I thought about. Like, I am terrified right now, and I know it's fine. Like, he's not going to kill me. We have respect for each other.
On
but
purpose.
Like, right. But people look at that and they go, "Now that's courage," right? And
That's
to
stupidity.
me, it's just it's what we do.
I didn't get to roll with him, but I got to roll with Cody Gamble.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Talk about a big, strong, mobile. How do you move how you move? I think he was 260 at the time. I'm like, I thought I was big. And I was like, is this how people feel when they roll with me? I'm giving myself some credit here. I'm like, this is miserable. This is miserable. Just heavy, strong. Usually I could just rip off grips. No, I would do it, and I'm like, he still got me. Like, fuck. Then I puke after, and Isaac's got it on video. I'm sure he's got that in his phone saved. But I was like, dude, this is. And it was after the podcast, so we're recording the podcast with Isaac. He's like, hey, and I brought my rash guard because I'm at a jiu-jitsu gym, right? He's like, oh, dude, you ready? You trying to roll with everyone? Cody Law's gonna be here. Cody, a couple of mine. I'm like, you can't say no. So
Right.
I'm like, yeah, sure, dude, yeah.
You're all in.
Dude, it was great, but it sucked
Sure.
in a good way.
But I told you the story about Isaac when we were texting. It was kind of funny because I was listening to some of your old episodes. Your podcast has become one of my favorites. Like I said,
I appreciate that.
Listen to most of the
Dude, means the world.
recent ones, and then I started digging back in, and that's when I saw. I was like, oh, Lou's on here, and Chris Williams is on here. Like people that I know pretty much. I think I know pretty well because I've known them for years. But I got to learn more about them, which was really cool. And Isaac was one of the first ones I grabbed. I was like, oh, yeah, Isaac on, great. Because that guy is just, like, I can't say enough about how impressed I am every time I speak with him and you hear anyone else talk about him. And it's just, it's unbelievable. But it was funny because I was listening to that episode and I had just posted something about my brown belt because it was like the day before when I got it. And I'm listening to it and then and it popped up a message on my phone from Isaac, like saying, hey, congratulations, brother. Great job, whatever. And I was like, he's like listening to me or something. He knows I'm listening to his
He's
podcast.
watching
How
everything,
is that?
dude. He watches everything.
Kind of funny.
He's very intentional. That's what I'll say. Like, I had him on the podcast beginning of last year. I'll still see him at 2-4 or something. He comes up to me, hugs me. Hey, what's up, bro? How's everything? He's very intentional in the relationships that he has. And there's not a lot of people like that anymore. And like, he's earned my respect time and time again, but just doors always open, kind of like you. You're like, hey, you want to roll tonight? Like, there's not a lot of people like that, So like those are relationships you have to you have to honor those relationships because they come with the best of intentions.
Yep.
You know, and it's not even just jiu-jitsu. Like I can assure you, if I texted Isaac, hey bro, I have a flat, like I'm in your area, can you come help? He would probably drop what he's doing to come help me.
Yeah.
Dude, like, he's just an awesome dude. Shout out Isaac.
Absolutely.
So, what transformation do you think you've felt in your personal life since you started this jiu-jitsu journey? Because one thing I love about jiu-jitsu is it changes you. You can't do it and not change.
Yep.
It forces you to grow. So what have you experienced personally that has changed for you, whether in mindset, physical, that you kind of carry into your personal life?
Yeah, there's a lot there. I would say one, and we, kind of joke about it a little bit. You talk about, I'm 51 years old, right? I'm not a young chicken anymore,
bro, that's it,
right?
just seasoned.
But I'm probably in the best shape of my life, right? In terms of cardiovascular, in terms of strength, in terms of just check all the boxes, right? I'm in great shape. The self-confidence is probably the biggest thing. From me, the person I was before I ever stepped on the mats to now, just knowing that, one of the greatest things, I say this all the time, I've said this numerous times in this podcast, one of the greatest things about jiu-jitsu, because there are so many of them, but one of the kind of selfishly great things about jiu-jitsu is those moments when me, the 155-pound, 50-plus non-athletic guy, gets to roll against some kid who thinks he wants to be a fighter, who was like a wrestler or a football player or whatever, and outweighs me by 50 pounds and wants to run me through a wall, right? And within a short amount of time is tapping for air, right? And can't figure out how this old guy just subbed him, right? Like, those moments are amazing. And I think about me now versus me before then, and like having the ability to do that, it does wonders for your self-confidence. Just walking around with my family, wherever I am. I feel like if something went down, heaven forbid, I could, handle myself, which is big. It's big.
That's
being
huge.
that,
It's confidence,
being a protector, right? And then the other thing, like I've mentioned about, like, whether it's work, whether it's family, whatever the case may be, I've been through really difficult things a lot. You know what I mean? I've had opportunities to quit a lot. That resiliency.
There's a quote, life's easy, hard.
Yeah.
The more hard things you do, the easier your life is.
Yeah. You can't, to use the name of the podcast, relentlessness doesn't just happen. You can't just wake up and decide to be relentless. It comes with having difficult things thrown at you and having to overcome things and having to realize things about yourself that you're going to make it through, right? You're not going to quit. You're going to overcome. That's where it comes from. You know what I mean? And
seeing it through.
Yeah. And so being able to, hopefully let other people know about that value is huge. And I think about, I'm a different person, no doubt about it. Not the same person that I was before, and that's one of my goals in life is kind of pretty general, but it's just to be a little better than I was yesterday. And I am definitely guilty of comparison. I know the famous quote, "The comparison's the thief of joy," right? I have a hard time with that, especially being around so many great athletes and people who are a lot younger than me, and doing all these things, and like trying to keep myself centered and not compare myself to them, compare myself to myself, right? And say, I'm better than I was yesterday. Well, then I win, right?
For sure.
You know what I mean? So
that's a great way to look at it. And I think that's the whole premise of the podcast, man. Like, you don't have to be the best. You don't have to be, you just have to be relentless. You have to be relentless in whatever pursuit. Like, you want to be good at jiu-jitsu, be relentless.
Yep.
You may miss a day, come back tomorrow. You may miss a week, come back the next week. You may miss a month. You may miss 6 months. Come back. Don't quit. If that's a priority of yours, come back and get back at it.
Yep.
When the one of the final questions I like to ask, when the cameras are off, the podcast is over, people are listening to your episode, it's done. What's one message you want people to take with them?
That's a heavy question. I mentioned earlier one of the things that I'm super passionate about is mental health. That I think we've done as a society. I think we've done better at talking about it a little more. I still don't think we talk about it enough. But I think that if I was able to, if people felt like they were comfortable talking to me about something going on with them that might make them feel a little better, that's one thing, right? I think that one of the things that I've learned in talking to some of the experts and doing some of the talks that I've done around mental health is one of the things that's, it's kind of funny to say it's okay to be not okay, right? And there's levels to that. And I actually was able to bring a friend of mine, Trey Tipton, who I met through Edgar, actually. But he's another one that's on my list that I'm going to give you for people you need to get in. But he's done a lot of work in the mental health space and has started an organization, things like that. But I was actually able to bring him into FedEx and do a talk. And he and I are actually going to go to, because of that talk, one of the interns reached out to me, and we're going to go out and speak to University of Pittsburgh at their, I think it's their engineering organization about mental health sometime soon in the next few months. But one of the things that he talks about, it's not just, it's okay being okay, but it's getting past that and realizing you have to fight through it and be better, right? And kind of being a warrior. But I just want to be the guy that people know have their back, that they can talk to, that people are comfortable around. And again, I'm always striving to find value. And my value is what value do I add to you, right? Whether that's a fighter or whatever it is you want to be. Yeah, I think that's the big thing, man. I go back to my mom and talk about how she dedicated her life to service. And I think if people thought back about her, it's what she was able to give to them. And that's really how I kind of try to approach life, whether it's my kids, my wife, any of my friends who I think I could, again, on that list, I think I could give you about 30 from just my close-knit group of friends. Because I told you, other than the Fight Worthy podcast that we've done a couple episodes, I've thought about launching one called My Amazing Friends.
I want to launch one called Talking That Ish, where I just talk shit the whole time.
That's a good one too. But yeah, man, I think jiu-jitsu, MMA, the gym, that family environment, that it can provide that space, right? That safe space where, hey, maybe you're not okay, but here you are, right? And that's one of the things I've learned, like I said, through all those different experts and different stuff. Like sometimes just checking on somebody can make all the difference in the world, right? Just because someone's smiling doesn't mean that everything's going good. Doesn't mean there's some battle they're just not comfortable talking about, right? So if I can be that person to check on you, make sure you're good, and you feel comfortable reaching out, I think I've done something special.
And where can people reach out to you if they want to follow your story or drop down to the academy? Where can people find you?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the best place to get me. Kirk B. I have a Twitter or an X. I don't know if I'll ever be comfortable with X. I don't use it too often. I'm on Facebook, Kirk Bradley, obviously, but yeah, Kirk B on Instagram. Come down to the academy, check me out. Doors are always open. Just got to sign a waiver.
Yeah. And with that, we'll end it. Sign the waiver. Well, bro, I appreciate you for jumping on the Relentless Project. It's been an awesome conversation.
I appreciate you, man. Everything you're doing. Like I said, this has become one of my favorite podcasts, and I really I think you're doing some awesome work. So
I appreciate that. I'm going to keep pushing forward and find more ways to make it better and bring awesome people on like yourself. So send your list over.
Absolutely.
This is the one with Kirk Bradley, and we're out. Later, brother.